All right, so let's dive in. What is phonetics? So this is our introduction to phonetics, and you can see a bunch of funny looking symbols up there at the top. You will be learning how to use those, what they mean, and they won't look funny to you, at least hopefully by the time we get midway, 2/3 of the way through. But we'll take it piece by piece and you'll just be amazed by what you learn, I hope. Okay, so why do I have a slide called What is Language for Phonetics? If you've taken language development, you might be saying, well, I don't understand how language has to do with phonetics. It must, phonetics isn't that speech. Well, to understand phonetics, we need to understand language. And I want you to write in the comment section of the video, what is language? So what do you believe language is? So pause the video and then uh, give yourself a little time to think about that, and then write those comments in, and then we'll continue. Okay, hopefully you stop the video and you're not, cheating a little bit by going ahead. So let's talk about language. Again, if you've taken language development or if you're about to take it now or you're registered for it now, you're going to be learning this. But language development has 3 domains: form, content, and use. And we break those domains into 5 components. This is like a quick overview, nothing in depth of language. But I'd like you to look at that, the domain of form. We've got 3 components there: phonology, morphology, and syntax. That's where our focus is for phonetics. More specifically in morphology and phonology. So syntax is the big, dealing with the broadest part of forms. So word order, how complex is your sentences, and are the words in the right order. So that's syntax. Then if we move down a little bit and we focus on morphology, that has to do with words and the endings we put on the words to change their meaning. So that we're still at the word level there, whereas syntax is kind of sentence level, and morphology is word level. And then we're going to go even further down into phonology, which is at the sound level. So what sound? So I might say the word, I want to go have an ice cream. That's the syntax level. Did I put those words in the right order? Right? Then we're going to go into morphology. Maybe I should have used a different sentence, because I'd say, let's change that. I want to go have some cookies. How's that? There we go. So I want to go have some cookies. And actually, my 19-year-old just cooked them. So actually, I think I might have a cookie after I do this recording. So I want to have some cookies. Now we go to morphology. Let's take the word cookies, and we could break that word down into cookie and S. So the morphemes there are cookie, because that is the actual thing we're going to eat. But that S on the end makes it plural cookies, because I'm not just having one of Nathan's chocolate chip cookies, because they're really, really good. So that's morphology, is kind of looking at those word endings and how we use those to change the meaning of words. It could be an S to make something plural. It could be an ED to make it past tense. There's lots of different ways we can do that. Finally, let's take that cookies, and let's look at the phonology of the word. So in that, we're going to look at the individual sounds, like k, u, k, e. How many sound? Oh, I forgot this, because we're not having just one, right? So k, u, k, e, s. So that's 5 phonemes or sounds in the word cookies. So that's the level of phonology. Quick overview of that, but we're going to go into that and do some practice in next week's lectures. But that's kind of where we'll focus. We'll spend most of the time in morphology and phonology for this course. But basically, those are language areas, and phonetics are the sounds of the language. Hopefully that makes sense. So hopefully with your language, and my slide was thrown off because I had to shrink it a bit, so sorry about that, I didn't catch that. What is language? So language, over on the left, you formulate an idea. And then it goes to speech. The person transmits the idea. Then the listener receives the idea, and then it goes to the listener's brain where they comprehend the idea, they process it. So that's what language is, communicating the message. How do we do that? We use speech, we use phonemes. Phonemes and phonetics, is that the same thing? Not quite, but it sounds close, right? All right, so what is speech? Speech is spoken language. How do we produce speech? Well, this is kind of a layman's terms of, the articulators that we need for speech. But when we get into the biological module, then we'll talk specifically about, or a little bit more in depth about each of the articulators. But we need the teeth, right? We need those sounds that use the teeth. No, not the t, like the TH sound, right? We need the jaw. If we don't have the jaw, we have nothing to support the tongue, right? Nothing for the, so that the tongue can do what it needs to do. And then here we have the velum. The velum, or the hard and soft palate, is what you're used to hearing, what you're used to calling them. So, and we need that because our tongue contacts the roof of our mouth for a lot of our sounds. Think of k, k, or sh. We're close to that. So the way we produce our sounds are how we are determined by how we constrict the air in the oral passage. So try those out. And then we need the lips, right? For the p, b, m. We also need lips for the w, which is something that, doesn't typically come to mind when you think of using your lips for a sound, but we need that rounding. And then finally, a baby sticking out his tongue. It's really hard to find tongue pictures that aren't really gross, which shouldn't be the case since I'm a speech pathologist and I look in people's mouths, but apparently tongue pictures are just kind of gross. Anyway, so the baby's tongue, with it, you need the tongue for t, d, n, l, lots of those sounds. The tongue is a pretty busy articulator. All right. So we can see speech, but usually clinicians don't use this tool. Researchers are going to use it. Linguists are going to use it. If you enjoy speech science, then you'll love this tool. But let me play that so that you can see what it looks like.
If a hole is achieved in the number of strokes assigned to that hole, the player is in par. If 1 stroke less than the par is needed, it is called a birdie. And if 2 strokes less are needed, it is an eagle.
Does that make sense at all? Does that even look like anything speech related? So those are called formants. Those are called, there's a whole area of study called acoustic phonetics. And there is a chapter in your book about that. We really won't go too much in depth about that, but I have saved that video to the playlist so you can have a look. That is a spectrogram that is printed by a spectrograph. So, and that just records speech visibly. So to get more in detail for that, you will have to take Dr. Bunta's class. So that you can learn more about that. Definitely not the area that I practice in. Okay, so I want you to stop the video now, and I want you to go to the link space and watch this video, Phonetics, the Periodic Table of Sounds, and then come back and we'll talk a little bit about it. All right, I hope you enjoyed it. The Ling space is great for a lot of the topics that we cover because it's linguistics and there's a lot of overlap with that. So what I want you to really tune into, and again, we'll go into it a little bit more next week, but general rule, 1 symbol equals 1 sound for phonetics. Okay, that's going to be the most important thing. We'll talk about how phonetics is different than letters next week, and that's going to help you understand why it's so important that in phonetics you represent one sound with one symbol. So the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, was not originally meant to be used clinically. So there are some variations. We'll talk about that a little bit in the next lecture. So, and there are several different fonts on your computer that have IPA access so that you can, you know, I think like Helvetica does, Lucida Grand does, Monaco. I have tried to figure it out. It's been a very frustrating experience for me. So if someone does figure it out, let me know. I've also downloaded some software for it, but then Microsoft did an update and it doesn't work anymore. So I'm going to share with you in the next slide, I'll share, or in the next lecture, I'll share a resource that I use that works out fine for cutting and pasting phonetic symbols into your work so that you can submit it to me in your assignments. So the other option too is that if you want to write it out and just take a picture and submit that, that's totally fine. Just make it, you know, easy for me to read the symbols. So finally, for your Dig Deeper, there's a Lingthusiasm episode 6, and it's all the sounds in all the languages, and that's about the IPA. So that might be something that's interesting for you. Thanks so much, and see you in the next lecture.